Dustin Baker, Vikes Now, the Friday edition. We are a few hours removed at the time I'm recording this from the 2022 schedule released. I posted on Vikings territory around noon thanks to some triple sourcing that came through accurately. And for that, I am grateful. We were supposed to have on the proprietor of Viking Central tonight, but I believe we got our wires crossed like it happened to Nick Olson. So you're going to get me reacting to the schedule raw. I haven't planned any notes, any preconceived thoughts other than just glancing at the thing. So here, let's do this. I'm going to go down by one. I'll go quick as to not waste your time. I know the sweet spot for YouTube videos is about 15 minutes, so I'll cap it at that, hopefully. First one is week 1 at the Packers. At home, I saw this and I was like, mixed reactions because it's baptism by fire for new head coach Kevin O'Connell. But he had to play them sooner or later, so why not get him acclimated right away? This will be the first time that the Vikings have ever hosted the Packers at home in a week 1 game with fans in attendance. You'll recall the splotchy 2020 game, the pandemic season with no fans. Vikings looked like idiots. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. But this matchup, it'll be cool to get the Packers right away, so to speak. Last year, they played tremendously shitty, or shitty in a tremendous sense in terms of scale. Last year, was it against Tampa? Yeah, week 1. So maybe they have that in their arsenal again, where they come out flat without Devontae Adams and Darius Smith. After that, the Vikings travel to Philadelphia for a Monday night game. We call it a revenge game because the Eagles dispatched the Vikings from the postseason 5 years ago. But the Vikings have already beat them twice since, and we talked about it on the show earlier this week. You don't know what you're going to get with Jalen Hurts in the game. They've got a good receiving core now, but this will be a Monday night game on the road and against Cousins' old divisional foes, which he actually plays well against. I think as a Viking, I believe it's 6-3. Leading the Vikings to a 6-3 record as the quarterback against NFC East opponents. So this one, I got to see how week 1 goes before I can say, oh yeah, we got this, because it is on the road against a pretty good football team that has a decent roster that looked hungry last year, even made the playoffs. Some of us forget the Eagles made the playoffs. After that, come home against these upstart Lions in week 3, US Bank Stadium. And this should be a win. If something goes wonky in weeks 1 or 2, this better be a win. Otherwise, it can be a momentum type of contest where maybe they're 2-0 and they're looking to go 3-0. But the Lions, their roster is quietly getting pretty good. They're building their trenches, but it's the Jared Goff show. And I don't know if Jared Goff will ever get back to his 2018 form. I doubt it. He would have done it by now. But in reality, if these Vikings claim to be contenders, they sure as shit better win this game against the Lions at home. It's been a long time since they lost the Lions at home. I think it was 2016, I believe. I should have done the math on that. But this is all on the fly. Didn't have any notes today for you. After that, the London game, the neutral site game against the hated Saints. And we don't know what to kind of, just like most of these teams, we don't know what we're going to get with the Saints. Because if it's Jameis Winston, who's efficient but not dynamic like he was for the first part of last year, are they really that scary? I don't know. We won't know until the games start whether or not the Saints are inherently a good franchise or if it was Sean Payton all along. Your pal, Sean Payton, who has the Netflix movie about him. I'm going to try to go to this game, and they better win if I'm going to saddle up my whole family and pay about $4,000 just to get over there. I hope they win. This one I'm excited about because I'm going to it, or at least that's the plan. And then it'll be cool to try to get some nasty taste out our mouths from losing on Christmas during the COVID season when they just spanked us at the Caesars Superdome. After that, a home game again, so we're kind of alternating on and off of these home games. Take on the Chicago Bears in the early part of the season at US Bank Stadium, something that hasn't happened since 2014 or 2015. Don't remember the exact date, but you'll know. I know you follow this shit like a madman like I do, so every final home game since US Bank Stadium opened was against the Bears. This year, they flipped it. We'll get to traveling there at the end, but a Bears team that Ryan Poles, I think I called him Ryan Pace on this show a couple times, is trying to build in a way where he's just grabbing a bunch of guys, not necessarily good ones, but he's building the team in his image. But this game doesn't scare me, just like the Lions game doesn't scare me. And I should have said the Saints game doesn't scare me too much. We got a lot of brilliant Vikings fans in Ireland and England, and I fancy the Ireland part because on my dad's side I'm Irish, on my mom's side I am Norwegian. So a couple hats, literally, that I'll wear on the show from time to time. After that, to the Dolphins, who suddenly have a very good roster. They added a bunch of offensive weapons, including the hipster-like offensive coach. With the Zimmer Vikings going to Miami, it seems like if this indeed was still the Zimmer Vikings, I would say, yeah, I don't know about this one. But with some steam from the O'Connell, hopefully getting off to a start here by this time of at least 3-2, hopefully better if they're actually good, which is the almighty if right now. This isn't a terribly daunting game, but it is on the road against a crazy fast Dolphins team on offense, and something that might just click with Mike McDaniel, or they could suck. Tua could be hurt, not be the real deal, and then we play Teddy Bridgewater. If that was the case, did you think about that one yet? After that, a bye week, hit the can down the road bye week. I learned while I was accumulating all of these schedule leaks from sources that the Vikings allegedly requested a bye later than after the Saints game. They just wanted it that way. They didn't want the bye right after week 4 in London. They wanted to, like I said, kick the can down the road a couple weeks, and that will be week 7. After that, come home for December 30th against the Cardinals, Halloween Eve. On one of my other podcasts, the NFL theme one, NFL Trend Zone, Wes Johnson, Jason Bowen, and Cody Spears, I predicted the Cardinals to go to the Super Bowl and take on the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's at home, and you won't know what kind of Kyler Murray you're getting, if it's the MVP version or the anemic one where they just fall off the face of the earth when it matters the most. But I don't like this game. The Cardinals, to me, are super talented. I think DeAndre Hopkins will be back, or this is the game that his final game out. I can't remember. But regardless, the Cardinals, they're scary to me, probably not scary to you. But I don't like this one just because I think the Cardinals are a good football team who is on the cusp of breaking into an elite tier, and that goes for Kyler Murray as well. He's so damn good. After that, we go to Washington for a Cousins, revenge game in the nation's capital. That is week 9, November 6th. It'll be his first trip back to Washington after they punted on him after the 2017 season. He better win this one. It's not in prime time, the narrative that goes on about him. And the Commanders, if they get those edge rushers going again with Montez Sweat and Chase Young, then they can be formidable like they were 2 years ago. The defense that made the playoffs played the Bucs real good. But I like this game on paper. Cousins doesn't often have the reputation as a chip on a shoulder guy, but if he's ever going to have one, for God's sake, it should be on this game against the Commanders. Not because they're playoff bound or Lombardi driven, but because this is his old foe. So I expect his A game to come along with that. If it doesn't, for God's sake, I'll be pissed just around, right along with the anti-Cousins crowd. I'll be like, you can't lay an egg against your former team in your former house. Now right after this is where the schedule gets dicey. You go to the Buffalo Bills in week 10. And then I don't care who you are, you shouldn't like that game. The Bills are right there. They deserve to be in a Super Bowl based on how they've played. Their quarterback is the next big thing. Diggs gets all the targets known to man. And this game should not be winnable for the Vikings. If it is winnable, then the purple and gold team is going to make a lot of noise in January and February. If they waltz into this game with broad shoulders, thinking whatever they might be, that's 9 games, 6-3, 7-2, and they knock off the Bills, this is when we're going to get excited. And it won't be quite too cold then because it's a couple weeks before Thanksgiving, but it'll be a fun one. I know there's some folks that I've talked to in my Viking circle that are already going, along with the Miami game. That's a popular one. I should have mentioned that. But this is a tough row because like a murderer's row right after this. And this is all November. And October and November are Kirk Cousins' strongest months per history. He usually starts slow, although he hasn't the past 2 years, especially not last year. And then in December is not his strongest suit statistically, when For God's sake, it should be. His sweet spot, for whatever reason, is October, November. So thankfully, all of these nasty opponents, they're good type of nasty for their sake, Cousins gets to get when he historically plays his best. The next game is Week 11, Dallas Cowboys. It's time to beat this team at home. 3 straight seasons playing the Cowboys. That quietly snuck up on us. And the last 2 ended in defeat. Andy Dalton led the charge in 2020. Cooper Rush, infamously, his squad knocked off the Vikings last year on Halloween, which is the point in the season last year when I knew that the 2021 Vikings were not a team of destiny. You probably laugh at that, like, of course they're not. But at that time, I still held out hope that they're going to figure this out. Zimmer's got one last hurrah. But I knew driving home 4 hours from that game, pretty much this team ain't shit. Like, they're going to end up being 500, and they pretty much were. Because Danielle Hunter was hurt. That was really my main beef. Like, well, we're not going to have any defense anymore because Hunter's out. But they'll get a chance at redemption. And for the love of everything holy, if the Cowboys beat the Vikings at the Vikings house 3 years in a row, no good. So I hope somebody knows that going into that game. I'll tweet the shit out of it. Hopefully they recognize it. The next one, the shocker on the schedule. For the first time in 62 season history, the Vikings are going to host a Thanksgiving game, a night Thanksgiving game. I can tell you this wreaks havoc on a family man like me, because what am I supposed to do? We always host Thanksgiving 4 hours southwesterly of Minneapolis in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is where I live. And so I don't know if I'll be able to make this game, but this is Kevin O'Connell's old team. So he should, just like I talked about Cousins' chip on his shoulder, he should have a mini one for this. It's the team that drafted him. Could never usurp Brady, but who on earth could? But he should say, just like every athlete or coach does, like, yeah, these are my old boys. I'm gonna take it to them. So I like this game. I think the Vikings, based on what I know about them now, this game doesn't scare me. It might scare you, but the Patriots will have a good defense. Mac Jones won't be incredible. After that, it's at home against New York Jets. So quietly, that's a 3-game home stand. For me, it'll be going back every week for 3 weeks from Sioux Falls, Minneapolis, but that's all right. This should be winnable at home against the Jets. If you can't beat the Jets at home, I don't care how good their draft was, then we're going to be talking about a sad season in Kevin O'Connell's first voyage, and then probably the chatter about Cousins not being it for the long term. If they're in a spot where they're not very good and they're losing to the Jets, I don't want to think about the Twitter sphere in that moment. But I think they'll win that one as well. And I'm not even formulating a win-loss prediction. I'm just spitballing these here. After that, at Detroit, a chance for vengeance after that cataclysmic failure on 4th and blah, blah, blah. When the ball just snuck by Dantzler and Peterson out there, defense was atrocious. At Detroit last year, the Vikings usually don't have problems at Detroit. So when I see this sort of late in the season, I'm like, all right, we can handle that. I don't have that bad of a taste in my mouth for last year when they couldn't circumvent the, was it winless Lions at the time? Ugh, drove me nuts. After that, the Colts, the weekend before Christmas. This one will either be on a Saturday or Sunday. They've got this weird to-be-determined status on like when the game is going to happen. And this is the Colts coming to US Bank Stadium, and I'm here to tell you certifiably that the Vikings in the last 5 years have played like complete morons against the Colts. The 2016 game was one of the worst I've ever been at. It just absolutely sunk the Vikings' playoff chances. Not that they were really ironclad then. That game was miserable. And then the 2020 season, when it was week 2, and they were trying to rebound after losing to the Packers. I think it was week 2. And they went to the Colts and just looked terrible. Cousins was off in the first half and couldn't get anything going. So whenever they play, eventually there's people in Indiana that just think that the Vikings franchise is just diseased, because the last 2 games, the Vikings were, at the time those games took place, a decent or a good football team. And then when they played the Colts, no good. Unsatisfactory performance. Week 16, staying at home. I love this 9 games at home thing. Christmas Eve, another one that's tough for a family man traveling to. The Giants, I think Daniel Jones will be quarterback at that time. I don't know. Andre Patterson will come home to US Bank Stadium. I think Everson Griffin will play for the Giants by then, just my personal prediction. But this is really when the rubber hits the road on the schedule, the final 3 weeks before these 2 road games, and they should be able to beat the Giants at home, unless we're staring in the face some team that's completely mediocre or underwhelming. I do like the Giants on Christmas Eve at US Bank Stadium. They're another team that's building a good roster, but they just don't spook me unless Brian Dable really is a bald genius. After that, this is the one that's these last two games are generating the, oh my goodness, it's the final two games of the year at the primary foes. So I told my pal Wes Johnson, you're going to get a glimpse of the Vikings' testicles during this game, these two games, because if they're good enough, you shouldn't matter. You shouldn't care about going on the road to take on the Packers and the Bears. And I'm just going to lump these into one, because all that really matters at that point, heading into New Year's Day, is how good the team is playing then. Are they a playoff team? If they are, you shouldn't be rattled by playing the Packers on the road or the Bears on the road. You were already sick of playing the Bears at US Bank Stadium every damn year. Well, here's a comeuppance. Now you got to go play Soldier Field, and it'll be sloppy. You can put that in your pipe and smoke it. And then the week before, it's the Packers, and it's going to be cold, January 1st, no doubt about it. I'm going to guess if that isn't already prime time, that it'll be flexed into that if both teams are good. But of course, I would have preferred a different outcome, that you wouldn't finish out the season with the Packers and Bears on the road. But again, you're going to prove what you're worth. And if you are burrowing towards the playoffs and it's the Packers and the Bears on the docket, you should say, who cares? Bring them on. We hate them. Let's go beat them. And 3 of the last 4 matchups at these guys' places, the Vikings have won. And the only game that they lost was with Sean Mannion at the helm. And I tweeted that out, and one of my favorite people in all of these digital Viking spaces is Sal Spice. And she posted a purple Kool-Aid thing saying, this is what I was drinking or distributing, which I suppose it's a crime to stay optimistic or look at the pristine version of what the Vikings can be. So yeah, the last 4 times that Minnesota has traveled to Lambeau or Soldier Field, 3 times they've been victorious. In the time that they were not, Kirk Cousins wasn't playing. When we get deeper in the summer, I'll tabulate my win-loss prediction. I didn't do it on the fly here, but I have the team pegged right now as, before I see any actual snaps, I would say 10-7, 11-6, 12-5. That's the vibe that I'm getting. But I'm usually more optimistic than most, especially because I believe in the efficacy of the offense with Cousins, Jefferson, and Cook. And then the proverbial can't get much worse on defense, especially the last 2-minute collapses. So that's my snap reactions to the schedule. I will be back probably Saturday or Sunday with a new topic, probably schedule-oriented again, because that's all the sexiness right now. But take it easy and skol, baby.